So in continuation to yesterday, what we are looking at, so said input box, accepting values from a user. So you can pass on variables, and using the variables you can expand. So basically use slider or you can put in input. So this slider is one of the good objects for this multi-value kind of selections, right? So this is helps. And this slider, yesterday I showed also demonstrated that you can use a particular field. So you can use, suppose I use this territory ID, or I'll say territory ID for now. I can use the multi-value option over here also. So right, as a territory ID, I can use a multi-value option where I can select like value between 1 to 5 or 5 to 10. That kind of a scenario I can select. So 1 to 10, 1 to 5, or 1 to 4. It says 1.5, though there is no value called 1.5. So it will just take the next value, that's all. So that kind of selection it is doing. Along with this slider, there is a calendar object. We'll come back to this calendar object. Okay, I think we'll go ahead with the calendar object itself. So basically, along with the slider object, same object has a calendar. So if you switch between calendar, you can select a field or a variable. So basically, you can select a field, a date field. So I will go ahead and select order date. So this is my date field. It will give you an option to select a calendar. So if over here, if you see, so basically you can select a calendar. Now these dates that you're seeing, right, 2005, 6, 7, 8, it's basically based on the field. Now whatever maximum date that is available in the field, it will start from there, and like the minimum date, it will start from there, and the maximum date, that is whatever date, the last date is available till that. So the user can select it. Now this is one field, one date he can pick. So the order date will get selected accordingly. Now this format is basically that you have to format it here. So just display it as date. It will display it as date. Right, so it is displayed. Now in the same calendar, you can set this property for a multi-value property. So in the calendar object, order date, you can say multi-value. Now what happens is, in a multi-value, it's not very interactive in my opinion. We don't use it. You can just, the user can just drag and select it. Now what happens is user will have to drag like a couple of times to pick the particular date or particular date range. So there is no specific point that you can explain, okay, start and end date. So that's one of the reasons that you can't do anything. For a scenario where you need to select a start and end date, so there is this variable option. And when you come to variable option, there is no multi-value option in the calendar. So in the slider, there was a multi-value, right? In the calendar object, there is no multi-value. There is just variable. It says v first. So you can pass it to a variable. So I'll say test 2 and 3 I'll take. A minimum value is 0, max value is 10. Now you have to give your minimum start date and maximum end date. So basically, if you want a calendar from 2006 to 2010, you'll have to give 1/6/2010 to this. Now the challenge over here is, or the catch over here is, you can't directly give date. You can't give a date format. You'll have to give the numeric part of the date. When I say that, so this is a Julian thing that is there. So if you convert this 1 to 2006, right, so into a numeric So in Excel, if you go and you just format this field as number or general for that sake, so you'll get the part of it. So it says 38,007. So you'll have to use this value 38,717 here as the minimum value. And the maximum value is something that, again, it's like if you want it till 2009. So I will choose a odd date, Feb 5th, 2009. To paste the format, 39849. So I gave the dates between this max and minimum value. When I apply, my calendar will be exactly from there. So 6 to 9. So if I go to 6, it will be from Jan. When I go to 9, it will be only Jan and Feb. Right? So the user will be able to select it. Now this way I can define what is my start date and what is my end date and what the calendar I wanted. So once I have this, I can do this, copy paste. Now this will be, the first date will be my start date. The second I'll have to pass it as end date. So I'll take V3. So the same values. Now actually I can pass the same values for this also. Now what happens is the user can select a particular date. So yeah, so basically you can select your start and your end date like this. So you can go ahead and select Jan 1st, 2008 to Feb 1st, 2008. Right. Now this selection doesn't guarantee that, okay, you can, that it selects the order date. So this is the selection that I want to do in an order date, right? So I have an order date. It doesn't select. So though I have selected this 2008 to February 9, it is not selected. For this, we have to set up a trigger. So give an option. Now that brings us to another object, which is nothing but button object. So you go to button. Now button is a clear cut. It's like a button. When you click on it, it has to perform something. So there is nothing else that you can update in a button except for an action. So I'll say, to begin with, I'll say apply date. Okay. Now a button is created, but it is grayed out, right? I'll have to define an action. So this is general. On the second tab, there's something called as actions. So here you can define multiple actions. Now a couple of actions that buttons can define as add. So these are different categories type. So selection. Buttons can select in field, select excluded, possible, toggle select, forward, back, Pareto, lock field. They can do all of these options. If you look at it for a simple example, select in field. I'll just say okay. I'll give the field as territory for demonstration first. And I'll say territory 3. Now whenever you click on this button, territory 3 will be selected. So that's the selection that it can do. Right. Suppose I do this, territory 5. Click on it, 5 will get selected. Right. That way you can do it. Now similarly, you can do a selection for order date too. Now you don't have to like exactly pass the value. You can actually give the variable. So first I'll give one variable, then let's see how it works for two variables. So here I'll give this as $. Right. So it is selecting 1/1/2008, right? It has selected this value. So that's how you can pass various fields. Now I can delete it, add. There is select excluded, select possible, toggle select, forward, back. So forward is nothing but one step, whatever is selected forward. If you have deselected it, then Pareto select. It's like that 80-20, you can define how many, what to select on. And lock field, lock all field. You can do a host of these actions. The next set of actions are the layout. Layouts is basically activating sheets or activating things. So I can just say activate previous sheet. I can just give this action. What will happen is, you click here, it will go to the previous sheet. Now every sheet, if I keep setting this button, right, so I can give a user to move across sheets, right? So I can, in sheet 4, apply sheet, it will come here, apply. In every sheet, I can give an option for the user to go to the previous sheet. So similarly, if I add another button to give option for the user to move into the next sheet, you can give it. So it's like toggle for between sheets for the users. That's the layout. Or you can pick on a particular sheet. So activate sheet. Now here is the where the sheet ID will help you, right? When you say activate sheet, it will ask you sheet ID. SH01 is what I'll give. It will take me to the main tab, right? Because main tab sheet ID is SH01. If I go to the properties, general, SH01. That's how it will move to that particular tab. Then you can add a bookmark. So see, on top you have a bookmark option. Even for the users, that option will come. But in case you want to give it in the UI itself, a bookmark option, you can do that. Create, apply, replace. In fact, even for print. Now, under external, there are a couple of useful options. One is like export launch is something that is normal. That is there even in the right click. If you want to give it a button specific, you can do that. Open URL is something very special. So basically, if you want to launch a URL, right, you can just give the URL over here. You can say OK. When the user clicks on it, you can launch the URL. The URL gets launched. Hello. Sorry, as for some reason my internet stopped working, or not working. It took some time to connect back. So basically, you have actions. These actions are multiple different actions that you can do: layout, bookmark, print, external. So you are looking at external. External, you saw the open URL. And there is something called as open QlikView document. So this also refers to chaining of QlikView documents. Maybe in your interviews, people might ask you, do you know chaining of QlikView documents? Yes. So how do you chain the QlikView documents? Basically, you have a QlikView document, right? So this is our adventure works. I will just use the data model file. So I'll just say data model.qvw, the entire path I'm going to take, the entire path. And I'll just say open QlikView document, OK. And you update over here. Now, transfer state, apply state on top of current, open in same window. These are three options that you can select. Transfer state is, I have selected order date as 1/1/2008, right? When I say transfer state, when the document opens, even in that document, the order date will be selected as 1/1/2008. So apply state on top. Suppose when the transfer state you use, all the other selections in that application will be cleared and only order date will be selected. If you say apply state on top of current, now if that application has any specific selection, so if it is selected as year 2008 or if it is selected as territory 5, it will not clear the territory 5, it will apply the order date onto it. So you can choose what you want. Open same window is like for the browser, whether you want to launch a different browser or same. So I'll just say apply. Okay. Now what happens when the user clicks on this button, that particular document will open up. Okay, I didn't really change over. Okay, now the document is opened over here. So this is the document, right? So if you want to look at it, we'll see what all is selected. order date is selected. And let me just clear and close this file again. The thing is, there were two actions. One was to launch the browser and one was to apply state. That's why both happen simultaneously. Let's go kill the open URL, delete it, apply. So one button can, so if you look at it, the document opened, and if you look at the current selection, the order date is selected, 39448. So that's how you can open. This is called as chaining of documents. Now you can keep, like this document can have another button pointing to another document. So like this, you can chain multiple documents into along a big analytical application. Now one button can have multiple triggers. So these are also called as the actions or triggers. So one button can have multiple triggers. You can add another trigger of however you want to, right? So like that. It will be, the triggers will be processed in the sequence. Now, for example, if you go to the external, right, you have run macro is to execute the macro, but it doesn't happen on the browser, and macros are to, like I said, stay away from macros as much as possible. The earlier versions, right, version 8, version 9, didn't have a lot of features that we are seeing now. So be it container objects, be it conditional visibility of dimensions or expressions, that was not there in version 8 and 9, and in fact even in 10. So that was a very challenge. I mean, that created a big challenge where you had to hide or unhide any fields or remove, create custom reports. That's why a lot of people resorted to the macros, and that time people used to very much use this Internet Explorer plugin. So macros work on Internet Explorer plugin. On Ajax client, they are really pathetic. I mean, it's like by luck. If they work, it's your luck. If they don't work, then you're gone. It is that kind of a solution on an Ajax client. So always use, I mean, I would say avoid macros. Set variable, we'll come back to this. Show information, close this document, reload, dynamic update. All these are standard. Dynamic update is a new thing, which is still not really utilized in a production scenario, but you can do a research on it. The most important or very regularly used is set variable, right? So set variable has a lot of capabilities. Now, suppose I have so many variables, right? Let me just quickly take a look what all variables I have. Test 2, test 3, third number. So I'll take this v third. I'll add a couple of others. We show. Right. Now I'll go to the properties of this button. Set variable. I'll say v third, and I'll give value as 67 or anything that I want to. When I do this, the variable value will be set, right? 67. That's how I can set a variable value. So when the user clicks on a button, I can set a variable value. So this I will demonstrate more how to use it. Coming back to the calendar, right? Now we created a start date, an end date. How do we apply to it? So we use the triggers, we use the button. Now on the button, we will use the selection, select in field option, okay? Now when I select in field option, I will have to give the field order date. Now you saw that I gave something like this. Test 2 was the field. So I gave a value something like this. What did this do? When a user selected, it's selected. Now the same logic I'll use and make sure this gets selected between the values. Now for that, what I have to do is I'll use in single inverted commas. I'll tell greater than or equal to test 2 and just copy this and use lesser than or equal to test 3, I think. What is the variable? Test 3 is the right one. Right. Now my entire range is selected. So if you look at it, so the data is selected for that particular range. In this current selection box, you can see. So it says greater than or equal to 39448, which is the start date, and lesser than or equal to 39487, which is the end date, 29. For quick this thing, I will just select a smaller date range to exactly see how it is selecting. So I selected a new, I'll apply. So you look at it exactly 1 to 17. Right? This is how you can make range selections. There is no other method. This is the only method. Now sometimes you might say, user says that, okay, I don't need this apply date. Right? User will say that I don't need a apply date. I need, the moment a user selects a value over here, it has to get applied. It's a little complicated. I would suggest try to avoid as much as possible. To keep it very simple, right? Give a apply date, right? Ask the user to select both the dates and ask him to apply it. Does this make sense? And the syntax over here is simple. I mean, yeah, it looks a little complicated, but this is how you write variables. Whenever you want to give a range, right? So this is how you give greater than or equal to dollar, whatever variable, greater than or equal to value. It's not only for variable, even for value. If you want to pass a particular value, instead of dollar and variable, you give the value over here. So you have to give this kind of range to make sure you do a range selection. Now this button property, right? So this actions is also called as triggers. Now this can be set for a couple of other objects. Now for example, sheet, right? The sheet properties. You remember I told triggers will speak at the later part. So under sheet properties you have triggers. These are nothing but actions only. So you can have two kinds of triggers. When you activate the sheet, when you leave the sheet. Activate is when you suppose come into the sheet, what to do. When you move out of the sheet, what to do. So if you select add actions, it will take you to the same place, like what we just saw for the button, selection, layout, bookmark, print. So you can do that, selection, clear in field, clear all, kind of other things. Right? You can set an action when you activate the sheet, set an action when you leave the sheet. Any questions here? Okay. Now these actions can be built at multiple levels. So these triggers that I'm talking about can be built at multiple levels. So like this apply button, right? So I applied the button. Now let me just take this. I'll take this entire thing range. Okay. So like I said, the users might say I don't need the button, right? Now what happens is the moment the user selects this or selects anything in this, right? Any change in these two, start date or end date, the application should happen, the selection should happen accordingly, right? For that, you'll have to go to settings, document properties. Under document properties, there is a specific tab called triggers for all the triggers. Now, like I said, triggers are at multiple level. What we saw was one for the button and one at the sheet level. Now you have it at the document level when on any select. So when on any select is, no matter what selection it is, if a user selects any value in the document, you can set an action, right? You can trigger something. On open, so the moment the file opens, you can set up a trigger. You can select, you can clear, you can set a variable, you can do anything. Post data reduce, there is an option in QlikView to reduce data that we'll discuss later. You can set this thing, post reload. The moment reload is completed, you can set action or a trigger. Then field event triggers. Now you have fields, right? So we have so many fields. Now for every field, like I'm telling it, actually I'm stressing on this, for every field you can set a trigger, like customer ID. On customer ID, you have four things that you can do. One is select something in customer ID, change a value which is pre-selected, lock the field, unlock the field. So for all these four types of actions, you can set triggers. When somebody selects a value, you can add an action. When somebody changes the value, whatever is selected, add action. When somebody locks the value, add action. Unlocks the value, add action. So you can, this way you can create multiple actions. Now how you can use it is left to you. It's like unlimited possibilities basically. So some possibilities that you can't count at this point of time. So you can do any possible kind of action. You just have to be sure what you're doing with, because if you try to put field levels, the challenge is every field will have its own actions, right? So you never know how the user will flow. So you'll have to structure that out completely clearly first on a paper. What are the actions that you're going to set? You will have to see which action is contradicting another action or for a field, and then decide. And also for the variables, right? So the variables that we have created, any change in the variable, when you input the value to variable, when you change the value in the variable, you can set an action. So in this case, in our case, it is test2 and test3, right? So for test2, I'll say on change, add action, and select in field, I'll give the value order date. Then I'll say test. So it says whenever you add action, right, for field or for anything, it will say has action. So it will give this highlighter if you want to know which field you have set an action. So add action, add. The moment there is any change in any of these fields or variables, I want it to be selected. So what happens is the moment user selects the 9, it is selected. The moment he changes to 14, it is selected. The moment he changes to 24, selected. Right, this is how you can get rid of this button object. So you don't need this button. Select it till Feb. Any questions?
You mentioned document means entire this QVW.
Right, QW.
Okay.
So a couple of other objects that have this trigger is the line and arrow. Line and arrow is basically a kind of a UI layout come trigger that you can use it. So you can say horizontal, you can say arrow style, I mean basically arrow or line or whatever you want to. Suppose if you are using arrow, it gives you arrow. Now you can set a trigger on this. So you can set an action. So when somebody selects the arrow, what to do? Right. There's one interesting selection over here. This toggle select, right, is a very interesting trigger. So you can, it's same as select in field. So toggle select, you can just say territory ID. As a 5. Okay. This toggle is interesting because when the user clicks on it once, 5 is selected. Second time, clear. First 5, clear. So it's like the toggle selection. Select, unselect, select, unselect. So like this. So this line object gives you a trigger. So if you don't use it as trigger, you can use it as a separator. So you can have vertical line also. I can have it like this. So it becomes a vertical line. All you have to do is stretch it so that it becomes a partition line for you. Like this. So from top, if you see statistic box, multi-box, table box, chart will come to it. Import, current selection box, button, text object also will come to it. Line arrow, slider, calendar, bookmark, search object, container. So we have completed most, I think all the objects except for text object and chart. So next week we'll start with text object. Text object is nothing but a plain Jane kind of, you can just type this is testing. But It is also a very powerful object. How it can be utilized or why, I will explain it in the next session, because this has the power to write expression, and whatever you see in the demos, most of it is text objects. And text object also comes with a trigger, right? So you can use a button to set a trigger, and you can use a text object to set a trigger. The idea is, so I'll explain in detail at a later point. We can set this. But you understand this selection, right? This range selection and date selection. So this whatever we have done it for date, you can apply it for any other selection method values also, if you want any range selection. So tomorrow we'll start with the text object and with the expression builder. So text object is where I will demonstrate all the expression building capabilities and what are the functions, how you can do it, and we'll understand set analysis. Then once we do that, we can move into charts. The problem I've kept, or the reason that I've kept the charts at the end, is this variable creation, triggers, this setting variables, all these things will help us realize how you can make those charts more effective. That is one of the reasons that I completed all the other objects first, and then we'll do it at the end. Yeah. Any questions?
No.
Okay, yeah, quickly one more thing. So I can set these buttons, right? Yeah, so I'll say show or hide. Right, this is a button I created. Now for the show or hide, I'll just set an action. Add actions, external, set variable. Now in the variable, I will select that variable vShow, I think, right? Is what I've selected. So I'll say set variable vShow as 1. Can't use show and hide both in the same button. One has to be show, one has to be hide. So the first one I'll use it as show. The second one I'll use it as hide. Hide, same variable, I'll select 0. It's like toggle between two, right? So one button will set the variable as 1, one button will set the variable as 0. So hide is 0, show is 1. Now what I'll do is, in this text object, or for that matter any object, I can set it like this: layout where conditional vShow is equal to 1. So what will happen is, when somebody selects show, condition is 1 true, visible, hide, it gets hidden. Right? Now this thing, this layout thing, I'll have to apply it for all the objects that I want to conditionally show or hide. So if I take this for order quantity, even for list box or anything that I want to do, show, hide, show, hide. Right. That's how I can do it. So this was the last bit of it. So you can control, how do you control it? So we'll see how to apply all of these things in charts and make some good charts.
Okay.
Alright, then I'll leave you guys for today.
Yeah. You were telling you will be sharing that Excels, and also I was working on that, so if you could share,
okay.
it'll be
Yeah,
great.
I plan for it every day. I get a little busy during the day and forget. I'll do it today. Yeah.
It's okay.